And welcome back to Patriarchy Principles, a podcast where we explore the values of faith, family, and leadership in building a life of purpose and resilience. The show is about helping fathers and leaders navigate life's pressures and challenges with courage and clarity. I'm your host, Jay, and today we're diving into a science, a motivation, resilience, and peak performance with Brian, a modern day Renaissance man whose unique journey spans from Hollywood stunts to the study of the human mind. With over 100 film and TV credits and a PhD in organizational psychology, two very different things, Brian has mastered the art of performing under pressure, both physically and mentally. Having worked as a performance psychology consultant for the U.S. Army and now as a thought leader and university faculty member, Brian challenges the idea that pressure is inevitable. Instead, he shows that it can be reimagined as an opportunity for growth and success. Today, we'll discuss strategies for transforming pressure, building resilience, and cultivating motivation in our own personal and professional lives. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Really excited to talk to you. It's not every day that you talk to someone who's done Hollywood stunts and has a PhD in organizational psychology, but I guess even stuntmen need a side job, a side hustle while they're doing the things.
Yeah, I wish there were more stunt people who had PhDs and pursued that route. But we all go the directions that we go.
No, for real. No, 100%. So your journey, like we're saying here, is really unique from Hollywood stunts to helping soldiers and leaders develop resilience. How did you get into all of it? The stunts to then to the army stuff to what you do now. How did it all kind of unfold and happen?
Yeah, well, really out of confusion. I mean, that's where it started. I was in college because that's what I don't know, that's what I was supposed to do in my mind. That was the path. You graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job, like that's just what you do. So I found myself in college, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea what direction I wanted to go in, and that was for half of college. Literally the first 2 years I was just floundering. And then a friend of mine was the company manager of the Batman Stunts show at the Six Flags in New Jersey. And I was going to Rutgers, which is in New Jersey. And he invited me out to see the show. And I went out and I just, from the first second of that show, when the explosions went off and motorcycles came flying out, that was it. That was it. I was captivated. I was mesmerized. It was for the next 20 minutes. I just sat there immersed in that experience. And because my friend was the company manager, I was able to go backstage and talk to the performers and ask them, how do you get this job? I couldn't even believe it was a job. That was something I was even struggling with. What, you guys are getting paid to do this? How do I get into this world? And they told me, what I needed to learn in order to get into the show, which was fights, high falls, and motorcycles. And I linked up with one of the people from the show. He taught me fights and high falls. I went and got a dirt bike. I practiced, went to the audition, got the job, and did that job the summer after my junior year. And it was the best summer I've ever had. I mean, it was because it was a lot of fun and I was learning a lot of things and there were a lot of challenges, but I also finally felt like I had direction. I finally felt like I knew where I belonged and what I needed to pursue. And that took a weight off in one sense, and in another sense put a huge weight on, because then I went back to school and could not focus on anything. And I mean, I struggled through the first semester because what I wanted to do had nothing to do with college. I'd never enjoyed school. I didn't like being there at any point from kindergarten right on up. So once I realized, all right, well, what I want to do has nothing to do with this, it was a tremendous challenge. You talked about motivation at the beginning. My motivation was nil. And it showed. I somehow or another passed the classes the first semester. I did not pass, or I wasn't passing the classes the second semester. I ended up dropping them all and dropping out of college and leaving with one semester to go to move to Los Angeles and do stunts. And that's what I did. And I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the environment. It was a constant challenge. There were always new things. And that was fantastic. And then, yeah, I don't know. I mean, 4 or 5 years in, I realized I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to continue learning. And at the time I had been coaching gymnastics for a little bit and had come across this weird thing where the kids that I was coaching, I was with them, yeah, I don't know, 3 days a week at practice. And then I would take them to a meet. And I don't know. I mean, the way that they performed at practice was not the way that they performed at the meet. Going both ways. I mean, I had some kids who were killing it at practice. I knew they could do the routines. They knocked it out every single time. And then I'd take them to a meet and they would tank. They'd fall and act like they'd never even seen the apparatus before. And then I had some other kids who, I don't know, they just screwed around at practice or would fall or, have little mistakes. And then they'd get in the meets and just tear it up. They were terrific. And that was a really interesting situation for me. That was an interesting thing that really triggered some thought around the power of the mind, because there was no other explanation for what I was seeing. I knew what their physical capabilities were, and yet they weren't demonstrating them in these performance settings. So I started to learn a little bit more about sports psychology. That took me into, I ended up going back to Rutgers. Back before the internet allowed you to do that from wherever, I had to physically go back to New Jersey and finish this last semester of college. But I did that, and then I continued on with a master's degree in sports psychology. And it was I mean, it was always interesting because the mind and just, again, just how it influences our daily interaction, the way we see the world, the way we understand things, the choices we make, all of that is just very interesting to me. But the applicability of what I was learning in the sports psychology program to stunts, that was something I could just put the stuff into practice right away. And it made the material clearer, but it also helped me to figure out how to communicate it and to apply it with other people I was working with. So the gymnasts that I was coaching, other stunt people, and then eventually with U.S. Army soldiers and other athletes, business people, first responders, I mean, all the people I work with now. But a lot of that came from just my reading the material, writing about it in school, and then going and testing it out in the world and putting it into practice and really figuring out what worked for me and figuring out how to communicate that to others. So that's how I got into the sports psychology part. And then, excuse me, sorry. As far as, moving forward, life does what it does. I had fully anticipated being a stuntman for my whole life, just doing that forever. That was my job. I didn't go to school to try to create conditions where I could get hired in any of those roles. It was just interesting material. I just loved it. But then I got married, came with a stepdaughter, and responsibilities that I didn't have when I was single. So and stunts is volatile. It's uncertain in the sense that you never know when you're going to work or how much you're going to make or even where it's going to be. I mean, it might be anywhere on the globe. And that makes having a family tough. So I started looking for a full-time job, and I found one with the Army, and I did that for 2 years as a sport and performance psychology consultant up at Fort Lewis in Washington. Did that for 2 years, went back to LA, got a divorce, went back to LA, and started doing stunts again. Did that another 4 or 5 years, and then got married again. That came with another stepdaughter and my daughter at the time, and same thing. All right, well, let's get a job that's more stable. And that brought me back to the Army. So this time at Fort Campbell, just outside of Nashville, which is where I'm originally from and where I am right now. And I did that job for 9 years. And it was interesting, the path, because you mentioned resilience and you mentioned motivation. Like originally that program with the Army was traditional sport and performance psychology, meaning identifying a performance and then helping people get into a place mentally where they can perform to their potential consistently. So, for example, it might be let's go out to the range and help soldiers get better, get qualification scores go up, or physical fitness, or finding IEDs, or medical tasks, or artillery, operations, whatever it is. There's a specific performance, and we want to make sure that people's attention where it needs to be, and energy activation levels are where they need to be, et cetera, and so forth, that allow them to be at their peak. That's traditional sport performance psychology. But when I came back that second time, they had added a resilience component that I thought was brilliant. It really from a theoretical grounding standpoint, it was the same, but the intent was different, and it was really about trying to help people have the tools and the resources that they need to handle whatever it is that comes up, not just work-related things, not just a performance setting, but just life in general. When stuff comes up, how do we handle it? And for me, particularly at that point in my life, because another divorce had happened not long after we moved out there, So for me, it was really great to be immersed in that material, being able to teach it and work with soldiers with it. But I was also, again, the application was immediate for me. I was not just reading about it, learning about it, talking about it. I was doing it in my own life. And I found it incredibly beneficial. And that's what really made me lean into that resilience training with the Army. And that's where I put the focus. I stayed at that job for 9 years. And probably the last 5 were really heavily focused on that resilience component. And at that point, I'd sucked all the juice out of that job that it had, and it was time to move on. And so I went back to stunts again for the third time, for those keeping count, and I opened my own business, which was originally, again, traditional sport performance psychology. I expected to work one-on-one with athletes, performers, meaning singers, dancers, musicians, etc. And I did that, but it wasn't that wasn't really where, I don't know, it didn't feed me the way that I had hoped that it would, and so I wanted to go broader. I wanted to go bigger. And that's where I am right now with Brian Hite Global, focusing on high stakes environments, high stakes situations, meaning any situation where the consequences really matter to you. Doesn't have to be life and limb like stunts or military. It's just any situation where the consequences are important to you, then that's a high stakes situation. How are we at our best in those moments? And I really love delving into that with people, particularly around the ideas of pressure and stress and how they show up and how we deal with those things, motivation, how do we maintain it over time, burnout, how do we avoid it? All these different things that can come along with these high stakes, high stakes environments. And I use the term high stakes intentionally, by the way, not high pressure, not high stress. And we can get into why later if you want to, but high
Mhm.
stakes situations. And that's where I am. And I'm really enjoying that. I'm doing some keynote speaking. I have some workshops. I have some group coaching classes. And I'm really having a great time with all the people that I'm meeting. I'm working with corporate people, first responders, athletes, performers, educators. It's really been a great journey.
Very cool. Wow, what a life. Back and forth a few times and in and out of different things. When did you get your doctorate along the path here?
Yeah, that was, well, I guess it was about 20 years ago. I went back to school and finished the bachelor's, and then I went straight from that into the master's, which was a couple years, and I went straight from that into a PhD program. But
Okay.
because of life, that program took me 10 years to get through. And I wasn't obviously enrolled in school for 10 years, but it took from when I started it to when I finished it, it was a 10-year process. That was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. I almost quit several times. In fact, I did quit several times, but then I went back and just kept going until I was able to finish that. And now what's funny is that, like I said, I hated school, literally hated it from the time I was little, and they put me in there for the first time right on up to when I left, after I did that stunt show. I hated school. And then, went back and then went back and then went back again. And now I'm a faculty member at Grand Canyon University. So it's truly is. I've learned to never say never, because I said I would never darken the door of another educational institution ever again when I left Rutgers the first time. And here we are. So, there have been a lot of situations like that. I'm never getting married. Been married twice. I'm going on number 3 right now. Never having a real job. Well, I did that too for about a decade. So I've learned that, and this is an important thing that I think transitions into a lot of other stuff, is that what's right for us at one moment in our lives isn't necessarily right for us for our whole lives. And that's really something that I've learned over the
100%. No, you're exactly right. And I remember for me, my bachelor's took forever just to get my bachelor's. It was a start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, get divorced, stop, start back up, finish kind of thing. And then straight into my master's and got my master's in developmental psychology. So uh, we're in the same ballpark in terms of field and whatnot. But no, I 100% get what you mean. It's never say never kind of thing, because then life will play its little life game, or God or whatever you want to call it will play its little life game and say, "Huh, you think that you're not going to? Let me tell you otherwise." But you're exactly right too. What's right for us in one part of our life isn't right for us in all parts of our life. We grow up, we get older, our priorities change, our needs change, what we want to do changes, opportunities change. different things come knocking at our door for what we can do. And sometimes it's hard to say no to, oh man, that's a great opportunity, but I don't want to do it. But I'm really comfortable where I'm at, right? It can be really easy to stay where you're at because you're really comfortable, right? You're like, oh no, this is just easier. I'll just keep doing this. I know how it works. I don't want to leave. I don't want to uproot. I don't want to change. A lot of people don't want to do that, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're saying is really important for people to understand because you mentioned opportunities. When I think about opportunities, I think about them really in three ways. Or let me say it differently. I think about it as three things need to be in place for us to take advantage of opportunities. One is we need awareness. We have to even be aware that an opportunity is present in the first place. Because sometimes we can get so fixated on whatever direction we're going or whatever's right in front of us that we're just not open to and aware of other possibilities that might be out there. So that's the first thing. We just need to open up our awareness and really accept that there might be some other stuff that we're not paying attention to. So let's see. Let's just open up and see what else is out there. The second thing is that we need to be flexible enough to shift. Like you said, if I'm going this direction and something comes up, I need to be willing to shift. And that can be a challenging thing for people sometimes. We like our comfort zone. It's called that for a reason. And so staying in that place where nothing is certain, and if you asked us, we'd probably say that. Well, yeah, I get it. Nothing's certain. But it's predictable. It's more predictable. The probabilities, I'm gonna be right about what's about to happen more often than I'm gonna be wrong because I've been in this situation and I know it. That's a way more comfortable place to be than, yeah, I don't know. This is a whole other direction. It sounds great. It looks like it has some good possibilities, but I'm not really, yeah, I don't know. That uncertainty can be challenging for people. So having the flexibility to just say, yeah, all right. So at this point in my life, I think that this other direction is the right way to go. A year ago, when I set the goals that I did, they seemed like the right goals for me and the right directions for me to go, for sure. But now I've lived a little bit more and I've experienced more things and I've met more people and I've learned more stuff. So now I think that this other direction is probably the better one. Some people have a very hard time with that. And honestly, a lot of it's cultural, I believe, in the sense that particularly here in the West and the United States, quitting or giving up or like changing your mind, like these are things that people demonize sometimes. And instead of recognizing, yeah, well, I mean, this is where I was and this is where I am. Those aren't the same places, so my goals aren't the same. That seems pretty straightforward. But when we get into it, it's this idea of, no, I set this goal, so I have to pursue this goal. That's the goal that I said I was going to do. I told everybody I was going to do it. And so I have to. That's what I have to do. Otherwise, people are going to look down on me. I'm going to be, I'm going to look down on myself. I'm going to feel guilty or ashamed. And we got to get past that so that we can have the flexibility to recognize, look, man, when the information changes, when the circumstances are different, our goals and priorities probably should change and be different too, or at least be reevaluated and us be okay with whatever that evaluation yields. So again, the first thing's awareness of just being aware that other opportunities are out there. The second thing's flexibility, shifting from our current goals to what we think the new goals ought to be. And then the third part is, I think, probably the hardest part. And this is where I think a lot of people really fall short. And that is having the courage to take that first step. The second, third, 100th, 1000th steps, those are easier to take. But that first one, that one's a hard one to take. So I might be aware that there's another opportunity out there. I might even be flexible enough to be willing to shift from my current goal to this other one. I see the value in that. But having the courage to actually take that step, to move away from what I know into the unknown, that's a really hard thing for a lot of people. But that's what is required if we are going to take advantage of opportunities. We can't just recognize the opportunities. We have to pursue the opportunities. That pursuit begins with that first step. So I appreciate you bringing all the things up that you just said, because I'm a wholehearted believer in what's good for me today may not be tomorrow, and I need to be okay with that and reevaluate. In fact, my first business was called Begin Again. My first book is called Begin Again. Utilize the wisdom of Eastern and Western ideologies to achieve your full potential. Begin again. Every day, every hour, every minute, we are beginning again. And I think that recognizing that and really leveraging that can be very helpful for a lot of people.
I 100% agree. And the part that stands out to me most from what you were just mentioning there is the fact of our goals, right? When we set our goals, and if our goals aren't working for us, why are we still chasing those same goals? Why do we continually to chase the same thing? It's like, oh well, I said it. I mean, we're still in January here at the time of this recording. We're basically in February. It feels actually it feels like we're in October with how long January's felt, with how much has gone on. But we look at our goals, we look at our resolutions, we look at them throughout the year, and we think back to January. It's like, oh man, but I was so excited to start that goal. I was so excited to start that resolution, but then I gave up on it. Well, why did you give up on it? I don't know. I just, I don't know, but I gotta get back to it. I gotta accomplish that goal. I gotta accomplish what I set out to do, kind of thing. Okay, but why? Why is that thing so important? Kind of thing. Oh, just cause it is. Well, just cause isn't really a great answer. Just cause isn't a really great motivator. You have to have more reasons why that goal is important to you beyond just I want to lose weight. Okay, why do you want to lose weight? Okay, what impact is that going to have on your life? Where is that going to have impact on your life? Because you have to find those motivations beyond that goal, right? And then if that goal is not working for you, well, maybe that's a telltale sign you need to adjust. You need to adjust your goals. It's okay to adjust your goals. No one's going to be mad at you. I bet most people don't even know you have that goal. So just adjust it a little bit, tweak it, change it, try something different. Adjust your goal of how many times you want to work out to how many times you want to strength train versus do cardio, or how many minutes a day you want to read versus be on your phone, or, all those different things. Adjust those different parts of the goal, adjust your measurement, adjust what you're trying to achieve, adjust, the different parts of a SMART goal. I think SMART goals are really, really important. Probably the best way to set a goal so that you know exactly what it is, how you're measuring it, what action you're taking, and all the rest of the SMART goal, right? What results you're looking for and what time you're trying to get it right. So those are all very important. But if your goals aren't working, change it. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't just give up and say, well, it didn't work. I guess this wasn't for me. I guess 2025 is not the year I try to get a little bit healthier. Just not for me. So then you spend the rest of 2025 from February through December getting more unhealthy. That's very counterproductive. When you could have just said, oh, well, that didn't work in January. I need to do something different in February. I need to adjust.
Yeah, well,
So,
the key thing that you were talking about there, I think, is the why. I mean, when we're setting goals in the first place, we should be very clear about why we're setting the goals that we are. And the wording of goals is also important, and that comes down to the why as well. In other words, sometimes I'll hear people talk about, goals in terms of what they want to avoid or things that they don't want to do, whereas we need to word those in terms of things that we do want to do. And here's the thing about the priorities is if you understand why you're doing what you're doing, then I agree with you. And that why hasn't changed. So I've set this goal. Here's why that's important to me. And I've started pursuing the goal and it's not working out. It's hard. And things aren't going the way that I thought that they were going to. Well, if what's important to you is still important to you, then I agree with you. Quitting is not what you should do. Adjusting is what you should do. And figuring out different strategies to achieve that end state that you want, because that why, what are you doing this for, is still there, and it's still relevant, and it's still important. But sometimes the priorities and the whys starts to change, or just the circumstances change. So for example, maybe somebody sets a goal of, I want to get a degree. Okay, well, that's terrific. And so you call the school, you get yourself enrolled, you get in classes, you start taking the classes, and you're doing this for, I don't know, semester, 2 semesters, maybe, whatever it is. And then your circumstances change. Maybe you get married, maybe you have a kid, maybe you get a promotion at work or even a new job offer. Well, now those things may take up different time. Now the priorities might be different. Now the amount of time that you're spending writing papers and taking tests, you might rather be spending with your kids, with your spouse, or pursuing the new direction with your work. And that's totally fine. And that's what I mean by the why. So why are you trying to do this? The priorities, we have to measure how important it is to us, how valuable these things are, because there's an opportunity cost. If I'm doing this, I can't do that. I mean, that's just the way that is. If I'm spending this 5 minutes in this way, then I can't be spending this 5 minutes in some other way. There's always an opportunity cost when we choose how we're going to spend our time and energy. So it comes down to really being clear about what our priorities are, what's really important to us, and getting those things aligned. So even with the degree, why am I getting a degree? Because I want to improve my life and the lives of my family members. Okay, well, let's say that new job opportunity comes up. And so now you take the job, maybe it's more pay, maybe it's a little bit more free time that you have. But so now the question is, okay, well, do I still want the degree? Because I've got this other thing that's also meeting my intent of improving my life and improving the lives of my family. So which is the more important? Which is the one that's going to be better? There's no right or wrong answer, just objectively, we have to figure that out for ourselves. And the right or wrong answer today might be different tomorrow. So yeah, I 100% agree with you around the goals and the shifting of directions. So that idea of why are we doing what we're doing, and keeping that top of mind throughout the goal pursuit is so important. And if the reasons that we are either setting or pursuing goals has anything to do with other people's approval, that's probably a red flag that we need to check ourselves with that. I set this goal, I'm pursuing it, but now I don't think it's the right thing for me. I think that my time and energy and maybe money would be better spent in other places, but I can't because I've told people I was going to do it. I said I was going to do it. And if I don't, they're going to think badly about me. That is the wrong reason to keep going with a goal. For sure. But we all fall into it. We're human beings. We're social creatures. We care what other people think. We evaluate our competence and we evaluate a lot of things based on how they compare to other people. That's one of the ways that we understand how we fit and where we fit in the world. And sometimes that can be a helpful thing, and other times it's not. And just recognizing that that's our natural tendency, okay, but it's not something that we're tied to, that we're forced to engage in. And again, the extent to which we care about what other people think is pretty incredible. And the other part of it too is that when we do that, when we engage in the behavior of I'm not going to do this thing, or I'm going to do this thing because of what these other people are going to think about me, we're doing a couple things. One is we're assuming that we know what somebody else is thinking. And I got to be honest with you, man, sometimes I don't even know what I'm thinking. So trying to get in somebody else's head, I think that the likelihood of me being wrong is pretty high. But the other thing is that I'm assuming that person's thinking about me at all. And again, just straight up honesty, most of the time we're thinking about ourselves. And even if we are thinking about somebody else, it doesn't carry the level of importance to us that other people might assume that it does. So if I'm doing something and I'm worried about what Jay thinks, you might actually be thinking what I think you're thinking. But the amount of importance that you're going to place on it and the amount of time you're going to spend thinking about it is going to be way less than what I build it up in my mind. So that's another little piece of reality that we need to remind ourselves of regularly.
Yeah. No, we have to remind ourselves, like, people, I think that comes from a very young age too. Let me backtrack there. It comes from a very young age, right? We're always worried about what other people think of us. Going back to grade school, right? Growing up, we're always worried about, do I have the right shoes, the right clothes? Do I fit in? Where do I fit in? How do I make friends? All these things, right? We're trying to figure out social things and be social creatures because we're humans. We're social creatures, right? Where do I fit in? How do I fit in? Do I fit in over here? Do I fit in over here? Do I fit in up there? Do I fit in down there? All these things, right? We're always trying to fit in somewhere, right? So we're always seeking someone's approval. And then we're growing up, we're always seeking our parents' approval, right? So we're always seeking approval from somewhere. But then as we become an adult, there's less people who we seek approval from, right? But we still seek approval. We still want to be justified. We still want our means to be justified. And then as we get older and older, people just really don't care as much, at least around me. Like, I've seen family members that I thought cared a lot that, they don't really care as much as I thought they did. They're not really as invested in my life as I thought they were. They're kind of just more worried about their life. Or, man, these friends I had back then in the day that were, very invested in my life, very concerned, and we would talk all the time, and we would be really close and communicate a lot. Yeah, they just don't, they honestly just don't give a fuck. They're just worried about them. That's a harsh reality to set in time, where it's like, "Ooh, man, I'm not the main character. It's just me, right? I mean, I just care about me. I just care about me and my own, right?" And it really relates to the Bible here in a sense to where we're supposed to, kind of just go off and be one with our spouse and be one, one unit, one family, separate from the rest of our family and go and be one with them and create our own thing, right? And then raise our kids and raise our family and things like that. So it can be something really tough to swallow. It can be hard for a lot of people to come to that realization, like, oh, there's not as many people that care about my goals or what I'm doing or kind of thing. I get less and less birthday wishes as I get older. I get them from the very few people who are really close to me that do really care. Or I get way less calls on Christmas because there's only certain people that really care, kind of thing, that are actually invested, that actually give a fuck, really. That can be really tough to swallow as you get older. It can be really depressing, but it can also be a really good thing too. Then there's less to worry about. There's less of other people to worry about. And it can be a really good rule to live by is that if they're not worried about you, well, you probably don't really need to worry too much about them at a higher level. You can kind of reciprocate that energy and give back to what they're giving you. At least in my opinion. Maybe I'm a little bit more harsh than some, and maybe a little bit more harsh than you on that, Brian, as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know that I agree with everything that you said, but I will say that balancing the individual with the social can be challenging. By that I mean we're all part of something larger. We're not this single thing that's just existing on our own. We right now I'm influencing you and you're influencing me. And wherever we are, we're influencing our environment. Even just our body temperature. When we're standing in a room by ourselves, our body temperature is changing the molecular structure of the air. Like everything around us, we are 100% connected to everything and everybody around us. There's no way to avoid that. And I think that recognition is humbling. And I think it's a good one to remember, especially when we start feeling very alone and very disconnected from other people. And I'll tell you, if there's nothing else out there in the research on resilience that's clear, it's the fact that other people matter. Connections matter. This sense of belonging matters. And when we can recognize that we are part of something larger and other people are too, it's putting all of that into perspective. I think that is the challenge. In other words, I think that if I recognize that I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy among guys.
You're
I'm
just a chill
a
guy. You're
person
just a
among
chill
people.
guy. You're just a chill guy.
That's all I am. I'm a person. I'm just one little piece in this larger cog, and keeping that humility in place. Then I think that's important, because what it does then is it helps me to recognize that I probably am not the focus of your attention all that often, and that's okay. That's as it should be. Well, I'm not the center of the universe. My drama teacher in high school used to call it a pre-Copernican ego. And I love that term. I still use it. Copernicus was the one who first said that the Earth was not the center of the universe. He said that, everything else. So anyway, so the pre-Copernican ego is this idea that the Earth is still the middle. Everything revolves around us. We are the center, and it all goes around us. And that is a tendency that a lot of people have. But when we can break out of that, when we can recognize that we are just moving around just like the Earth in the universe. I mean, we are just moving in conjunction with, and so we're separate from, but we can't be separated from. And that's a weird way to say it. Like, we're separate from, but we can't be separated from everything else around us. That's if we can recognize that on a daily basis, I think it does a lot in terms of not discounting what other people think, but deprioritizing the extent to which they approve or disapprove of what it is that we're doing. So the clearer we are about our whys, about our rationality for what it is that we're doing, and the more we tie our definitions of success to things that we're in control of, that align with those values and those priorities, the better off we're going to be. Again, it doesn't mean we need to disconnect or separate ourselves from others. It just means we put all of that into perspective.
Absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. It's perspective. It's about figuring out where exactly how much all these things mean to you, right? How much does that approval of someone else mean to you? How much does it mean? How much does it not mean to you? And whose approval means more to you, and all those things, and just differentiating those different levels. Uh, One of my favorite books that kind of talks about that a little bit here that I just want to mention. I don't know why it's one of my favorite books, but it just is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And just the overall message of that book is to make sure your fucks are put in the right places, right? Because if you're giving too many fucks, but that doesn't need as many fucks as you're giving it, then why do you have so many there? Take them back and put them where they belong. If they don't belong there, take them back and reprioritize. Put them where they need to go, right? Don't put more than need to be there. Put just enough and put the rest somewhere else, kind of thing. So that's one of my favorite messages of that book that it just reminded me of here. But to wrap up here, almost last few minutes that we have together, you mentioned high stakes at the top. What the heck do you mean by high stakes, and what practical advice do you have for cultivating motivation that lasts in those high stakes situations?
Well, the last part we've talked about quite a bit. I'll come back around to it in a minute. And the first part I mentioned at the beginning too. When I say high stakes, some people they do. They go straight to the police department, fire department, the military, stunt people. I mean, different people whose physical safety is on the line when they do different things. And that's not what I'm or athletes. If you're going to be in the Super Bowl or the Olympics or whatever, like these types of things. But high stakes environments, they can be that. They can be financial high stakes environments. They can be physical high stakes environments. But they can also be social high stakes environments. Meaning, if I have to have a challenging conversation with my spouse, that can be a high stakes situation because the consequences really matter to me. Our relationship continues and we thrive. If it goes badly, the relationship ends and we're both going to be struggling, at least for a while. Like the stakes as we perceive them, that's up to us. So we determine whether a situation is a high stakes situation or not. And the reason that I say high stakes is because I started hearing a lot. I mean, throughout my career as a stuntman, etc., I've heard this too. High pressure situations, high stress situations, being able to perform well under pressure. These are things that people just throw around like it's true, like it's just a thing, like there is such a thing as a high pressure situation, or that we do just need to figure out how to perform well under pressure. And my argument is, and this isn't even a brand new argument either, I'll explain why in a second, but there is no such thing as a high pressure situation. There are just situations in which we can perceive pressure. And like I said, it's not a new concept. It goes back at least 2,000 years to Stoic philosophers who said it's not events that disturb us, it's how we think about those events that disturbs us. So the events just are. And that's just easy to point out too, because you and I, we've led different lives, we've done different things. We could be put in the exact same situation at the exact same time. One of us experiences pressure, the other one doesn't. So that'd be weird, right? That doesn't make any sense. If it's the pressure, if it's the situation that causes the pressure, if it's really a high pressure situation, then we should both experience high pressure, but we don't, or we don't necessarily. So that's the one reason to say, high stakes instead of high pressure, because pressure exists in the mind, not in the moment. We created ourselves by what we attend to and how we perceive what's going on around us, where our focus is, and what we think about that. So that's high stakes. Now, how do we maintain motivation when high stakes environments are just ones that we work? Maybe our job is just one of those ones where the stakes are high consistently. How do we maintain motivation and avoid burnout in those situations? That goes back to what we were just talking about, and that is aligning behaviors with values. What do we care about? What is it in that situation that really matters to us? If it is a work situation, what do we really care about? If it's a relationship situation, what matters to us most? What are those core values that we really want lived out and that we want to define ourselves and our circumstances by? Once we identify those, then we can align our behaviors with those values. behaviors are we're way more motivated to engage in them, and we are way more likely to sustain those behaviors when they are consistent with the values that we hold, the things that we really care about, those priorities that we've set for ourselves and for our circumstances. So that's the best way. I mean, just in a nutshell. And that's in contradiction too. So the flip side is, okay, so what shouldn't I do? Well, trying to create rewards or punishments to incentivize behavior, that it will do it. I mean, rewards and punishment are both sources of motivation. I can be very, very motivated to engage in a behavior because of a reward I think I'm going to get. But that source of motivation is volatile. As soon as the reward disappears, so does the behavior. And some things start out as a reward, but then they stop being a reward. And as soon as something like, you know what, I used to care about that, I don't anymore, then the behavior stops as well. Easy example of this is my daughter. You know, she's 11 now. Back when she was 4, I could say, hey, you go clean your room, I'll give you a popsicle. And now I'm like, hey, if you clean your room, I'll give you a popsicle. And she's like, no thanks, I'm good. So, you know,
Have a
yeah, to get the popsicle one, you know, but then things change and she's not anymore. What used to be a reward sometimes isn't anymore. You know, maybe you offer me $1,000 to do something, and I really want the $1,000. That's a reward for me, and so I go do it. But then I hit the lottery next week, and then you ask me again, you know, the following month, hey, you go do this for $1,000. I'm like, I'm good, Jay. I don't need to do that anymore. So if the only reason we're engaging in a behavior is to get a reward or to avoid a punishment, that's a really hard way to sustain motivation over time. Best way, it's not easy, it's simple. The simplest and best way is to align those behaviors with our values as much as possible. And the only way to do that is to really spend some time being clear about what our values and priorities are so that we can align the behaviors with them.
Yeah. No, you just absolutely rocked my world with that in all the best ways, Brian. Yeah, I've never thought about it like that. To how closely, how not even close, how hand in hand those two things are. You know, if we align our behaviors with the values, it gives us more intrinsic motivation to do those behaviors. It gives us more intrinsic motivation to keep it up, to continue on doing those things. Because those things are already important to us. And so let's act in a way that's important to us, right? Versus the extrinsic motivation, which can be great in situations, but it's also very short term, right? And yeah, man, you just kind of blew my mind. So I appreciate that. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. I'm like speechless after that because I don't know why I never thought of that, but that's great. So I love doing the podcast. I love talking to new people because I learn new things all the time that I just don't think about. So it's really cool. But Brian, anything else that you want to mention here at the end? I'll plug your website, but is there anything else that you want to talk about or mention before we wrap up here and I close this out?
Yeah, well, I'll just say this, you know, if pressure and stress and feeling overwhelmed in performance situations, if those are things that you struggle with or deal with regularly, I strongly encourage you, please just take a look at the website, take a look at some of my programs, or if anything that I've talked about during this really catches your interest, you know, just check it out, give me a call, send me an email, set up a discovery call. Just reach out because they're hard situations. I've been in all of them. And if you don't have somebody who can kind of hold your hand and walk you through and guide you in the directions of handling that stuff in ways that is beneficial, it can be really hard. So please reach out. I'd love to talk to you.
Love that. Well, Brian, thank you for sharing your very unique insights and strategies for transforming pressure and building resilience. Your journey from Hollywood stunts to helping leaders and teams have thrive under pressure, I can do words still, is a powerful testament to the connection between mind and body. To our listeners, if you want to learn more about Brian's work, visit BrianHiteGlobal.com, BrianHiteGlobal.com. I'm better at spelling than saying words. There you'll find resources, books, and programs to help you push beyond your limits and unlock your full potential. And again, thank you for tuning in to Patriarchy Principles. Remember, true leadership begins with mastering our mindset and using pressure as an opportunity to grow. Until next time, lead with confidence, embrace resilience, and keep building a legacy of faith and purpose.